Okay, so today we're taking a deep dive into a topic that's deeply personal and surprisingly really widespread: infertility.
Yeah.
We're going to be unpacking this connection between infertility and financial stability,
Yeah.
a connection that's not talked about nearly enough.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating area where medical science and economics kind of bump into each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see social pressures, these personal journeys.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we have a really, I think, interesting mix of sources. We've got medical research, we've got personal stories from those experiencing infertility, and then some expert opinions.
Really well-rounded approach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I think so. We're going to try to uncover all these hidden costs, both financial and emotional, and hopefully offer some solutions, some places where people can turn to if they're looking for support and advice on navigating this challenging landscape.
Absolutely.
Now, one thing that's real important to remember is that infertility doesn't discriminate. It affects people across all socioeconomic backgrounds, but the financial burden can be particularly heavy in low and middle income countries.
Absolutely. And actually, Stanford's SIEPR, which is a research institute, found that in some of these countries, one round of IVF can cost 2 to 3 times the average yearly income.
Wow.
Like if you think about having to spend years worth of your earnings just for one chance at having a baby,
That's a lot to put on someone's shoulders.
it is.
Literally.
It really highlights how unequal access to reproductive health care is globally. For a lot of people in these regions, assisted reproductive technology, or RT, which includes treatments like IVF,
Yeah.
is simply out of reach.
It's just not even an option. And even in developed nations like the US, those costs are, I mean, they're significant.
Yeah.
That same SIEP research found that a single IVF cycle here in the US can cost $30,000.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money. And to put that in perspective, that's more than half of the median household income in the US.
Huge decisions. It's a massive investment for a lot of families, and it means having to make really tough choices.
Yeah.
Do you delay treatment knowing that as you wait, your chances of success could go down? Or do you take on, a huge amount of debt, which could then jeopardize your future financial stability?
Absolutely.
A lot.
It is. And the Fertility Network UK report, we saw some real life examples of this. Families selling their belongings, dipping into retirement funds, and even delaying treatment because of these costs.
Absolutely. And they highlighted one cost in particular, an 1,800-pound embryo transfer fee.
Wow.
It's just heartbreaking to see these people having to make these sacrifices. And it also raises questions about, the ethics of it all. Is having a biological child becoming a privilege reserved only for the wealthy?
It really makes you think about those broader societal implications for sure. Now, while these financial burdens are definitely huge, what really kind of hit me was how much of an emotional toll infertility takes. As we were going through these sources, that really stood out.
Oh, absolutely. It's so much more than just the money. It's that constant emotional roller coaster of hope, disappointment, the fear of the unknown. You have all these societal pressures that often come with it.
Right. And even just the science of this too. Like when we're stressed, our bodies release cortisol, a hormone that can disrupt the balance needed for reproductive health. We learned that in the article, The Hidden Truth About Managing Financial Stress While Trying to Conceive.
It's almost like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
The financial strain creates stress, which then has a negative impact on your chances of conceiving. And then that leads to more stress.
Right.
It just keeps compounding.
Yeah, that's rough. And the stress isn't just anecdotal, right? The SI study and then facts about fertility pointed to studies linking infertility with higher rates of depression, anxiety, and lower self-esteem.
And then you have the social and cultural pressures, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. In a lot of societies, there's a huge emphasis on having children. So when couples struggle to conceive, it can feel like they're failing somehow.
Like they're not meeting these expectations.
Exactly. They're not living up to the life script.
Yeah.
And if you deviate from that script, you can feel incredibly isolated.
Judged.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that feeling of isolation is even worse because, people don't often talk about infertility. It's a taboo subject. So you're carrying this secret burden, and that only adds to the weight of it all.
Absolutely. It's like carrying this invisible weight.
Dr. Kimberly Thornton, a reproductive endocrinologist, spoke about this in the RMA of New York video.
Mm-hmm.
And, she was saying people try to tough it out, pretend everything's normal, but that anxiety, that stress, it catches up.
It does. And I think it's really important to emphasize that infertility is not something that you can just power through.
Right.
You need acknowledgement. You need support. And in a lot of cases, you need professional help to navigate it.
Yeah. And this brings us to another piece of the puzzle that's often overlooked: relationships.
Oh, yeah.
The strain that infertility puts on relationships.
It's a very sensitive topic, but important. The SAPR research actually highlighted a higher risk of divorce among couples facing infertility.
Really?
Yeah. And when you think about it, it makes sense. The financial strain, the emotional roller coaster, societal pressures.
You've got all those misaligned coping mechanisms between partners, right?
Exactly. One partner might be focused on problem solving and action. The other is dealing with, grief and emotional processing.
Totally different ways of coping.
And that difference can create tension and resentment.
It's almost like speaking different emotional languages.
Totally. And that's why I think experts like Rina Gower, who's a social worker featured in the RMA of New York video, emphasize the importance of communication. Couples need safe spaces to express their individual feelings and acknowledge the burden they're carrying.
It's really about finding ways to support each other through the ups and downs,
For sure.
recognizing that there's no right way to cope.
Absolutely. And knowing that it's okay to seek help when you need it. A therapist, someone specializing in infertility, can provide the tools to help couples navigate this.
So we've talked about the financial burdens, the emotional burdens, the potential strain on relationships. I mean, it's a lot.
It is. It's a pretty heavy picture so far, but it's important to remember there's also hope, and there's support, and there are solutions. And we're going to explore those in the next part of our deep dive.
We'll be right back.
One of the things that really stuck with me from these sources was a comment from Dr. Thornton in the RMA of New York video. She compared the stress of infertility to battling cancer or heart disease.
Wow, yeah, I remember that. It's not something you immediately think of, but it makes sense.
Totally. We talk about the physical aspects of those illnesses, but we don't always talk about the emotional and psychological impacts, which can be just as significant.
Absolutely.
And just like those illnesses, stress can actually manifest in physical ways, too.
Right.
We know that chronic stress leads to higher levels of cortisol, which can disrupt the hormonal balance needed for reproductive health. We talked about that earlier.
So it's not just about the emotional experience of stress. It can have a real, tangible impact on your body.
Exactly. And that's why finding healthy coping mechanisms is so important. Seeking support, therapy, support groups, mindfulness practices, these can all play a part in managing stress and promoting well-being.
Yeah, it's recognizing that we're not just machines trying to have a baby, right? We're complex beings with emotions and thoughts, and all these things play a part in our overall health.
You're absolutely right. Infertility needs to be addressed holistically, I think, encompassing not just the physical, but the emotional and psychological well-being of the individuals and couples going through it.
And one of the biggest hurdles, I think, is that feeling of losing control.
Yeah.
Infertility throws a wrench in everything, and it feels like your body and your future are betraying you.
It's a real feeling. That loss of control can be incredibly unsettling.
It is, and I think that's where this idea of regaining agency comes in.
Yeah.
Remember how Rina Gower, that social worker from the RMA video, talked about this? She encourages people to focus on what they can control, even if it's small things.
Right, right. And I think those small things can make a big difference.
Yeah. She suggests creating those daily to-do lists, even just for simple tasks, or taking a few minutes each day to just sit and acknowledge your feelings, and then follow it up with something enjoyable. It's about making sure you still have those moments of agency, that you're being intentional, even in the middle of all the uncertainty.
Exactly. And it's not about denying the challenges, right? It's about reclaiming some of your power and navigating the situation with resilience.
This idea of control applies to the financial aspects too, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so.
It's about taking charge so you can make those informed decisions about treatment, exploring alternative paths to parenthood, and building a future that feels secure no matter what happens.
It's about being proactive, not feeling like you're at the mercy of everything.
Right. And I think there are some amazing tools and resources out there. Those budgeting apps that are specifically designed for couples. There are financial advisors who focus on fertility-related planning,
Oh, that's interesting.
and even support groups where people can share advice.
Yeah, we saw recommendations for those apps: Mint, YNAB, Pocket Guard, and Honeydew. I think the articles from Young Finances, Good Financial Sense, and 7 Saturdays Financial all mention those.
Yeah, it's like having this personal finance assistant right in your pocket.
Right. I think those can be so helpful, especially navigating that confusing world of fertility treatments, all those costs.
Absolutely. And speaking of support, I think we should talk about community a bit. The Facts About Fertility article and Wellbeing magazine, both mentioned support groups.
Right.
And that feeling of you're not alone, that can make all the difference.
Huge. Being able to share your story and hear other perspectives, get some practical advice, it can really provide that sense of hope and solidarity.
Yeah. Support groups offer that space to process those
Yeah.
complex emotions, to challenge those societal expectations, and honestly, just to connect with people who get it.
For sure. You're building this network of people who truly understand.
Yeah. And those groups also provide an opportunity to learn from each other, share resources, and advocate for change as a collective, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about creating a movement,
Yeah.
having that collective voice to challenge the stigma and demand better support.
Yeah, that advocacy piece is so important, both on a personal level and a societal level.
I think so.
Mhm.
We need to be advocating for ourselves, for our partners, and for the community as a whole. More affordable treatment options, better insurance coverage,
Yeah.
even just raising awareness and breaking down the stigma, it all matters.
And speaking of advocating for change, one thing I think is so important is acknowledging that this conversation often centers on women,
Yeah.
but men are impacted by this experience too, as we saw in some of the sources.
Absolutely. They experience those emotional, psychological, and financial strains just as deeply as women do.
But they face these different societal expectations and pressures when it comes to expressing their feelings.
Right.
It's this whole be strong, be stoic, just deal with it kind of thing.
Then that can be so harmful. It keeps them from getting the support they need.
Yeah. It's time to break down those barriers and make sure men feel comfortable talking about this, seeking therapy, being part of those support groups, without feeling like they have to hide their emotions.
It's about realizing that this is a shared experience, and it requires a shared approach to healing and support, creating that space where all genders feel seen and heard.
And that support has to extend beyond just the individual or the couple too, right? We have to look at the systemic factors that contribute to this burden.
You're right. Things like access to affordable health care, mental health services, paid family leave, these all play a part in creating a more supportive environment.
It's like building a safety net, one that catches people when they fall, instead of expecting them to navigate all of this alone.
And a safety net that works for all families, no matter their income, location, or how they build their family.
Yeah, exactly. Creating a world where having a family isn't determined by your financial situation.
It's a vision, but one worth striving for.
For sure. As we were talking about the financial side, I kept thinking about the role of technology.
Yeah.
It's interesting how apps and online platforms have become so, well, intertwined with how we manage our finances.
Totally.
And it's not just budgeting apps either. There are fertility tracking apps, online support groups.
Telehealth platforms.
Yeah. So many new ways to access information and connect with people. It's almost like having a support system in your pocket.
It's true. But I think we have to be mindful of technology's limitations too, right? It can't replace that human connection that's so crucial when dealing with infertility.
It's a tool, not a substitute.
Exactly.
Mm.
And then there's also the possibility of misinformation and exploitation in the online world.
Yeah, good point.
We have to be careful about who and what we trust online. Make sure to go to reputable sources.
Especially with something as sensitive as infertility, just because you see it online doesn't make it true.
Right.
Oh, and we can't forget about advocating for ethical and equitable access to this technology. Not everyone has the same internet access or devices, or even those digital literacy skills.
Yes, so right.
We can't allow technology to make those existing inequalities even worse.
One of the things I keep noticing in these sources is this recurring idea of needing to reframe our thinking when it comes to infertility. It's easy to focus on the negative, the what-ifs, and feel like you're failing.
Oh yeah, it's so easy to fall into that trap. But shifting your perspective can make a world of difference, like Rena Gower says.
Yeah.
Focusing on what you can control, having realistic expectations, and celebrating those small victories along the way.
Even when things are tough, it's about finding ways to stay positive.
And challenging those societal expectations that just add to the pressure.
For sure. We need to move away from the idea that there's only one right way to build a family.
Yeah, whether it's adoption, surrogacy, or even just living a fulfilling life without children.
Absolutely. It's about defining what family means to you.
And going after it.
Yeah, with an open mind and an open heart.
And maybe that's what unlocks new possibilities, letting go of what you think things should look like, embracing the unknown. We've heard stories about couples struggling with infertility and then, finding unexpected joy through these alternative paths to parenthood.
The human spirit is so adaptable. We evolve and find meaning even when we're dealing with adversity.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. And speaking of hope, the landscape is constantly changing.
Yeah.
With all these advancements in medical technology, a growing awareness of mental health, and more people pushing for policy changes, it feels like there are reasons to be optimistic.
Definitely. More open conversations, more support, and this movement towards more inclusive approaches to family building.
Mm.
It's happening.
It makes me feel hopeful that one day, this burden won't be so heavy, that all families, no matter their path, will feel supported.
It's a vision worth working towards. It's about recognizing that all families have value and creating a society that reflects that.
As we've been talking about all this, I keep thinking about how important empathy is.
Yeah,
It's so easy to judge, to offer advice that wasn't asked for, to minimize someone's pain, especially when we haven't walked in their shoes.
it's human nature, but it's something we have to actively fight against, especially with infertility. What if, instead of offering solutions or platitudes, we just listened? What if we acknowledge how complex it all is, validate their pain, and just offer support without judgment?
As being there.
Yeah, I think that simple shift could make a world of difference.
It's about creating a space where people feel seen and understood
Uh,
without the pressure to, pretend everything's okay.
it's recognizing that everyone's journey is unique, and there's no right way to heal or cope. Sometimes just being there for someone is the most powerful thing you can do. And we can all do that, whether we've experienced infertility or not.
Creating a culture of empathy, one conversation, one act of kindness at a time.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe that collective empathy will lead to those systemic changes we need to see in the world.
As we're wrapping up this part of the deep dive, I can't help but think about that line from Dr. Thornton again, how the anticipation is the worst.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that applies to so much more than just the physical aspects of treatment.
Absolutely. The waiting, the not knowing, it can be so draining.
Whether it's waiting for test results or a positive pregnancy test or just dealing with the uncertainty, being stuck in limbo is tough.
It is. And yet there's this, I don't know, almost a beautiful side to anticipation,
Right,
too.
really.
Yeah. It's that possibility, that glimmer of hope that keeps you going.
Like that saying, it's always darkest before the dawn.
Exactly.
Even when you're surrounded by the unknown, there's that flicker of light.
I think that's the message we need to hold on to. The anticipation is hard, but it also reminds us that things can change. New possibilities are always emerging.
It's about staying present, appreciating those small moments of joy, and trusting that you're not alone.
And sometimes, that trust in the unknown, the willingness to embrace the journey, is what leads us to the most amazing places.
I love that. Life is full of surprises. And even when things don't go according to plan, there's still so much to be grateful for.
In that gratitude, that appreciation for the present, that can be incredibly powerful.
Finding those silver linings.
They're always there.
And that shift in focus can be incredibly empowering. It reminds us that we have agency, we have choices, and we can build a life full of meaning and purpose regardless of our circumstances.
Absolutely. It's about taking ownership of your story and recognizing that your worth isn't tied to your ability to have a biological child.
And who knows, maybe that newfound sense of purpose, that reconnection with your passions will open up unexpected doors. We've seen in some of our sources how couples who struggled with infertility found incredible joy and fulfillment by pursuing other dreams, whether it's travel, creative pursuits, or even starting a business.
It's a beautiful reminder that life is full of surprises. Sometimes the path we're meant to be on isn't the one we initially envisioned.
It's about trusting the journey, embracing the detours, and having faith that we'll find our way even when things feel uncertain.
You've hit the nail on the head there. It's about recognizing that our lives are more like tapestries, woven with threads of joy and sorrow, triumph and setbacks. It's this intricate blend, the interplay of light and shadow, that truly makes our human experience so rich and layered.
It's a powerful reminder that even amidst challenges, there's beauty to be discovered, strength to be cultivated, and wisdom to be gained.
Those lessons, those moments of growth and transformation shape us into the resilient, compassionate, and insightful individuals we're meant to be.
As we talk about finding meaning and purpose, I've been reflecting on the role of service. It's easy to get caught up in our own pain and feel isolated when facing infertility.
It's a natural human response. But focusing outward and helping others can be an incredibly powerful antidote to that sense of isolation and despair.
I've heard from so many people that shifting their focus towards service was incredibly healing and empowering.
It's because it reminds us that we're not alone, and that our experiences, however painful, can be a source of strength and inspiration for others. Even while facing our own challenges, we still possess the capacity to make a positive impact.
And there are so many ways to contribute. It could be volunteering at a local charity, mentoring someone who's walking a similar path, or just being a listening ear for a friend in need.
The key is to find something that speaks to your heart, utilizes your strengths, and aligns with your values. Approach service with a genuine spirit of giving and compassion, with a desire to make a real difference in the world.
And in that process of giving back, you might discover a deeper sense of purpose and meaning in your own life.
It's not uncommon at all. You might tap into hidden strengths, build new connections, and realize that even amidst personal challenges, you have the power to positively impact those around you.
It's a beautiful illustration of how interconnected our lives truly are. Even in the darkest of times, we each have the capacity to be a source of light and hope for others.
And often, that act of extending ourselves, offering support and compassion to those in need, is what ultimately helps us heal and rediscover our own sense of wholeness.
Well, as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to acknowledge the incredible strength and resilience of everyone navigating the challenges of infertility. It's a journey that requires immense courage, emotional fortitude, and the willingness to face uncertainty with grace and determination.
To those feeling lost, overwhelmed, or discouraged, please know that you're not alone. There's a vast and supportive community out there who understands what you're going through, who are cheering you on, and who are there to offer support every step of the way.
And to those who are supporting loved ones through this journey, thank you for your empathy, your patience, and your unwavering love. Your presence truly makes a world of difference.
This deep dive has taken us on a journey, exploring the intricate and often overlooked connection between infertility and financial stability. We've delved into the emotional, social, and economic aspects of this issue, examining personal stories, insights from experts, and research findings that illuminate both the challenges and the potential solutions.
But more importantly, this conversation has highlighted the human spirit's remarkable capacity for resilience, hope, and transformation. It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of adversity, we can find meaning, purpose, and connection.
If this exploration has resonated with you, we encourage you to dig deeper into the sources and organizations we've discussed today. There's a wealth of information and support available for those who seek it.
And remember, the conversation doesn't end here. Let's continue talking openly and honestly about infertility, challenge the stigma surrounding it, and work together to build a more just and compassionate world for all families, regardless of their path to parenthood.
Until next time.